I need you to think about something you did, maybe 2 years ago, maybe 5, maybe last week. You ordered a small box online. Inside, a tube. Instructions told you to spit into it, your saliva, your biology, your genetic code. Seal it and mail it back. And you did, because the company promised you something extraordinary: who you are, where your ancestors came from, what diseases might be waiting in your future. For millions of people, it answered questions they'd spent a lifetime asking. Adoptees finding biological family for the first time. People mapping hereditary diseases before symptoms appeared. Immigrants tracing ancestry erased by history. It felt like science. It felt like the future. It was a transaction. What you didn't know, what almost nobody noticed, is that buried inside the agreement you clicked through in under 10 seconds, there was a single clause. A clause that made everything that followed not just legal, but inevitable. Somewhere in this video, I'm going to show you that clause, word for word, as it appears in 23andMe's own privacy policy. One sentence that explains the bankruptcy, the data breach, the board resignations, and where your DNA ended up. One sentence that was there from day one. Stay with me. Before this video ends, I'm going to show you how the woman who built this company, who watched it burn, walked away with everything. The database, the science, the future revenue, all of it, and I mean everything. This is the story of 23andMe, a company worth $6 billion, built on human biology, destroyed by the very thing it was selling. And it's the story of a heist so elegant, so patient, and so perfectly legal that most people still don't realize it happened. Silicon Valley is drunk on disruption. A molecular biologist named Anne Wojcicki decides to democratize something that has never been democratized before: your own genetic code. She co-founds 23andMe. The name refers to the 23 pairs of chromosomes in every human cell. At the time, she is married to Sergey Brin, one of the two men who built Google. Let's not gloss over that. In Silicon Valley, access is everything, and Wojcicki had all of it. Quick pause. If this is the kind of story you want more of, billion-dollar companies, the moments that broke them, and the details everyone else skips over. That's exactly what this channel is built for. Hit subscribe. New empire implosion every week. Now, back to Wojcicki. The product is breathtaking in its simplicity. You pay $1,000, you spit, you mail it back. Weeks later, your ancestry, your health risks, your genetic identity. For the first time in history, ordinary people could look at their own genome. They threw parties to celebrate. Spit parties, celebrity-attended events where the famous swabbed their cheeks in public. Your genome as your personality, your ancestry report as a dinner conversation. Then, in 2013, the FDA knocked. Regulators ordered 23andMe to pull health results offline. People were making real medical decisions based on clinically unvalidated data. Most companies don't survive a federal shutdown. 23andMe didn't just survive, they thrived. And here's the detail that changes everything about what comes next. Something 23andMe did in 2018, quietly, that almost nobody noticed. That single decision is the seed of every disaster that follows. While you were logging into your 23andMe account to show your cousin that you're apparently 14% Scandinavian, the company was closing a deal in private. July 2018, the other party, GlaxoSmithKline, one of the largest pharmaceutical companies on Earth. A company that exists, fundamentally, to discover diseases in human bodies and sell the drugs that treat them. Here are the terms. GSK paid $300 million in cash directly into 23andMe's accounts. In return, they received exclusive access to 5 million customer DNA profiles for drug research and development. GSK didn't partner with 23andMe. They didn't collaborate. They bought access, $300 million, wired, for the right to search through 5 million people's most intimate biological data. The 5 million people whose DNA just changed hands. Technically, they consented. The word technically is doing a lot of work in that sentence. Here's how the consent worked. When you created your 23andMe account, you were shown a terms of service agreement. Multi-page, dense, designed, as all terms of service are designed to be agreed to, not read. Somewhere in that document, a clause permitting 23andMe to share your data with third-party research partners. No email, no pop-up, no notification that said, "We are selling access to your genome to a pharmaceutical company for $300 million. Just tick this box, scroll down, click Agree. Your biology just became a line item in a business transaction. 23andMe called it a partnership. What it was a sale. And that distinction matters enormously because the moment your DNA became something that could be sold once, it became something that could be sold again. In 2021, 23andMe went public via SPAC at a $6 billion valuation. That same year, they spent $400 million acquiring Lemonade Health, a telehealth company. The vision: genetic insights on one side, doctors on the other. Your entire health journey, cradle to grave. But there was one problem buried inside all of it. You buy a DNA test once. That's it. Your genome doesn't change. Your ancestry doesn't update. There is no repeat purchase. The subscription product, monthly health insights, ongoing monitoring, never gained traction. In fiscal year 2023, 23andMe reported a net loss of $312 million, a company valued at $6 billion, bleeding cash, with no mechanism to stop the bleeding. The product that was supposed to save them, the data, had already been sold. The stock that launched a $6 billion company began to slide, then faster. By 2023, shares that once made 23andMe one of the most hyped names in consumer genomics were trading at fractions of their listing price. On the day the company filed for bankruptcy in 2025, the stock was at 53 cents. What goes up on hype comes down on reality. And then October 2023 arrived, and everything you just heard, the GSK deal, the SPAC listing, the $400 million acquisition, all of it became almost irrelevant. Because what happened next didn't just damage 23andMe, it permanently changed the conversation about what genetic data companies are allowed to do. 3 things broke 23andMe. They didn't happen in order. They happened at the same time. The first detonation, October 2023. Hackers accessed the accounts of 6.9 million customers. Names, birth years, ancestry reports, location data, the genetic family trees, connecting you to relatives you may never have met. But here's the detail that separates this from every other corporate data breach you've ever heard about. The attackers didn't go after 23andMe's servers. They didn't crack the company's encryption. They used something far simpler and far more disturbing. They used your passwords. Passwords you'd already used somewhere else, on some other site that had already been breached. They called it credential stuffing. They took leaked passwords from across the internet, pointed them at 23andMe's login page, and walked straight in. And 23andMe's response, their official public statement, was to say exactly that. Your fault. You reused a password. Technically, they were right. But here is the part that makes it unforgivable. 23andMe had no mandatory two-factor authentication. The front door to your genetic profile had a single lock, and they called it your responsibility. The attackers didn't steal data randomly. They specifically targeted customers of Ashkenazi Jewish and Chinese ancestry. Not indiscriminate, deliberate, a curated genetic map of specific ethnic communities. extracted from a database, people trusted with their most intimate biological information. A $30 million class action settlement followed, later revised to $50 million when the company entered bankruptcy and victims pressed harder. There is no dollar amount that buys back what was taken. The second detonation, September 18, 2024. Wojcicki, watching the stock collapse towards zero, had tried to take the company private. Her offer to the shareholders, who had trusted her with their investment, 40 cents per share, a company that listed at $6 billion. 40 cents. The board rejected it, demanded a real proposal. It never came. What came instead was a letter. On September 18, 2024, 7 of the 8 board members resigned on the same day. Among them, Roloff Botha, head of Sequoia Capital, one of the most respected names in the history of venture capital, and Neil Mohan, the CEO of YouTube. Their joint statement used 5 words that were doing an enormous amount of work. We wholeheartedly believe in the mission. Not, we believe in the leadership. Not, we believe in the plan, the mission, stripped of the person running it. They were gone by sundown. The third detonation, March 24, 2025. 23andMe files for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Anne Wojcicki resigns as CEO. On the same day, 15 million people wake up to a news alert. Their genetic data, their ancestry, their health risks, their family's biological fingerprint is now a bankruptcy asset, listed alongside the office furniture and the intellectual property, subject to a court auction. The United States Congress convenes a hearing. They name it Securing Americans' Genetic Data. At that hearing, 23andMe's interim CEO confirms a number that stops the room. Since the bankruptcy announcement, 1.9 million customers, 15% of the entire user base, have requested that 23andMe delete their data and destroy their biological samples. The interim CEO's response: "We have done so within a reasonable time frame." Regeneron Pharmaceuticals enters the bidding, $256 million, for substantially all assets, including the database. Now, I need you to stay with me for the next 2 minutes, because what happened next is the detail that every other video, every newspaper article, every congressional hearing has either glossed over or completely missed. And once you hear it, the entire story changes shape. While Regeneron's $256 million bid was moving through bankruptcy court, another offer appeared. A non-profit organization, TTAM Research Institute, bid $305 million, $50 million more than Regeneron. A non-profit you have never heard of, because it did not exist 6 weeks ago. 23andMe filed for bankruptcy on March 24, 2025. Anne Wojcicki stepped down as CEO the same day. TTAM Research Institute was incorporated in May 2025. After the filing, after the collapse, after 15 million genetic profiles became a court asset, Wojcicki set up a non-profit, specifically, deliberately, with stated purpose, to buy back the database she had overseen into bankruptcy. On June 30, 2025, a bankruptcy judge approved the sale, not to Regeneron, the pharmaceutical company that develops drugs, from human biological data, to Wojcicki's non-profit, the vehicle she created after the empire fell. The acquisition, completed formally on July 14, 2025. She pledged to uphold privacy standards, to protect the data. Critics, privacy advocates, and members of Congress noted on the record that there is no enforcement mechanism, no external audit, no regulatory body with teeth standing between that promise and 15 million genetic profiles. Just a pledge from the woman who oversaw the breach, who offered shareholders 40 cents, who lost the entire board in a single afternoon, who filed for bankruptcy. She burned the empire down and bought the ashes. In the event that 23andMe goes through a business transition, such as a merger, acquisition, liquidation, or sale of all or a portion of its assets, your information may be sold or transferred as part of that transaction. That is the document I told you about at the beginning of this video. It was there on the day you made your account. It was there the day you sealed the vial. It was there the day you clicked agree. Now, Wojcicki's nonprofit owns your Genome, a pharmaceutical company, researched your family's disease history for drug development. A congressional hearing was named Securing Americans' Genetic Data. Senators asked serious questions. Nothing has been passed into law, and somewhere, on a server, is a file. It contains your ancestry, your genetic health risks, your family connections, the biological traits you inherited and the ones you'll pass on. You created it. You funded it. You mailed it in. Nobody forced you. Nobody deceived you. Nobody passed a law that allowed this because they didn't need to. You read the summary. You scrolled to the bottom. You clicked agree. Here is the question I want you to sit with tonight. 23andMe told you. It was all in the document. 47 pages, publicly available, legally binding. They wrote down exactly what would happen to your data if the company ever went under, and they published it. So, the question is not whether 23andMe deceived you. The question is this: right now, how many other companies have that exact same clause buried in their terms of service? And which one goes bankrupt next? Which empire should we burn down next? Tell me in the comments below. And if this one hit different, the full playlist is right there. Every collapse, every founding myth, every moment someone clicked agree without reading what they were signing. See you at the next one.